The morning sun cast long shadows across the training grounds at Camp Pendleton as Staff Sergeant Maria Santos adjusted her rifle scope for the 100th time that week. The other Marines had already dismissed her presence, their conversations flowing around her as if she were invisible. At 5 feet 4 inches tall and weighing barely 125 pounds, Maria looked nothing like the imposing figures that populated the elite sniper training program. "Santos, you're up next," barked Gunnery Sergeant Thompson, his weathered face showing the same skeptical expression he wore every time he called her name. The doubt in his voice was unmistakable, though he tried to mask it with professional indifference. Maria rose from her position, checking her gear methodically. Her M40A6 sniper rifle felt like an extension of her body after months of intensive training. She had requested transfer to the sniper program 3 times before finally being accepted, and, even then, only because of a shortage of qualified candidates and her exceptional marksmanship scores during basic training. The other trainees watched as she approached the firing line. Corporal Jake Mitchell, a towering former college football player from Texas, nudged his buddy. "Think she'll make it past the 1,000-yard shot today?" he whispered, not bothering to lower his voice enough to hide his doubt. Maria had heard it all before. The whispers about her size, her gender, her supposed inability to handle the physical and mental demands of sniper training. She had grown up in East Los Angeles, the daughter of a single mother who worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table. Her childhood had been filled with challenges that made military training seem almost easy by comparison. Her father, a Marine veteran who died in Afghanistan when she was 12, had taught her to shoot during weekend visits to her uncle's ranch in Riverside County. Those precious Saturday mornings, learning to breathe, to focus, to find that perfect moment between heartbeats when everything aligned, had shaped her more than any formal education ever could. "Range is hot," announced the range safety officer. Target distance, 800 yards, wind variable from the northeast at 8 to 12 knots. Maria settled into her prone position, feeling the familiar comfort of the rifle stock against her shoulder. She closed her eyes briefly, filtering out the sounds around her, the distant hum of helicopters, the conversations of other Marines, the rustle of equipment. In that moment of silence, she could hear her father's voice from years ago: "Mija, shooting isn't about strength or size. It's about patience, precision, and understanding yourself." Through her scope, the target appeared as a small dark circle against the tan backdrop of the California hills. She calculated wind drift, accounting for the spinning motion of the earth, the temperature, the humidity. These calculations had become second nature, as automatic as breathing. The first shot rang out across the range. Perfect center hit. The second shot followed moments later, equally precise. By the 5th shot, even Corporal Mitchell had stopped making jokes. Maria's grouping was tighter than anyone else had achieved that day. "Outstanding shooting, Santos," Gunnery Sergeant Thompson said, his voice carrying a note of genuine surprise. "But, remember, shooting paper targets is different from the real world. Out there, targets shoot back." Maria nodded respectfully, though she wondered if he would have made the same comment to any of the male trainees. She had heard the stories about Thompson's own combat tours in Iraq and Afghanistan, how he had earned his reputation as one of the Marine Corps' most effective snipers. His skepticism wasn't personal, it was professional paranoia born from years of seeing good Marines die in combat. That evening in the barracks, Maria sat on her narrow bunk, cleaning her rifle with the same methodical precision she brought to everything else. The other trainees had gradually warmed to her presence, though she still felt like an outsider looking in. Conversations would pause when she approached, not out of hostility, but from a kind of awkward uncertainty about how to include her. Lance Corporal David Chen, a quiet electronics specialist from San Francisco, was the first to really talk to her. "My sister wanted to join the Marines," he said one night as they practiced range calculations. "My parents talked her out of it. Said it wasn't a place for women. What do you think?" Maria asked, not looking up from her ballistics charts. Chen considered this carefully. "I think she would have been a damn good Marine. Maybe better than me." These small moments of acceptance meant more to Maria than she let on. She had spent her entire military career proving herself over and over again, in basic training, in military occupational specialty school, in every assignment. The pattern was always the same: initial skepticism, gradual acceptance based on performance, then, the cycle would repeat with new people in new places. The sniper training program was particularly brutal, not just because of the physical demands, but because of the psychological pressure. Snipers operated alone or in very small teams, often behind enemy lines for days or weeks. They had to be completely self-reliant, capable of making life-or-death decisions without immediate support or guidance. The enemy doesn't care if you're male or female, Maria's drill instructor had told the class during their first week. A bullet kills the same either way. But, your fellow Marines need to trust that you can do the job when everything goes wrong. That trust was hard-earned, especially for someone who didn't fit the traditional image of a warrior. Maria had learned to exceed every standard, to volunteer for the hardest assignments, to never show weakness or doubt. It was exhausting, but it was the only path she knew. One particularly challenging exercise involved a 3-day field training mission where teams had to infiltrate a mock enemy position and eliminate specific targets while avoiding detection. Maria was paired with Corporal Peterson, a veteran of 2 deployments who made no effort to hide his skepticism about working with a female sniper. "Look, Santos," he said bluntly as they prepared their gear, "I'm not trying to be a jerk here, but if things go bad out there, I need to know you can handle yourself. I've got a wife and kids at home." Maria understood his concern, even if his delivery left something to be desired. "Peterson, I've been taking care of myself for a long time. I didn't come this far to let you down when it matters." The mission proved to be a turning point. When their primary route to the target was compromised by unexpected patrol activity, Maria identified an alternative approach through a drainage culvert that Peterson had dismissed as too narrow. Her smaller size allowed her to scout the route and confirm it was viable, saving the mission. Later, when Peterson developed severe food poisoning from a contaminated meal, Maria carried both their gear for the final 12 hours of the exercise, maintained watch through the night, and still delivered perfect shots on all 3 assigned targets. "I owe you an apology," Peterson said as they waited for extraction. "And, probably my career. That was some of the best fieldcraft I've ever seen." Word of Maria's performance spread through the training unit. Gradually, the whispers changed from doubt to grudging respect. Her shooting scores consistently ranked in the top 3 of her class. Her fieldcraft was exceptional. Most importantly, she demonstrated the kind of calm under pressure that distinguished elite snipers from ordinary marksmen. The final examination came during their last week of training. Each candidate had to complete a solo mission involving a 1,000-yard shot under challenging conditions, followed by a 2-mile movement to an extraction point while avoiding simulated enemy patrols. Maria drew what many considered the most difficult scenario, a target positioned on a hillside with multiple wind variables and a narrow window of opportunity between patrol sweeps. She would have less than 30 seconds to identify, acquire, and engage the target before enemy reinforcements arrived. As she settled into her firing position in the pre-dawn darkness, Maria thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment. Every doubt, every obstacle, every person who had told her she wasn't suited for this role. She thought about her father, about the promises she had made to herself and to his memory. The target appeared exactly as briefed. Maria calculated distance, wind drift, and elevation in seconds. Her breathing slowed to match her heartbeat. In that perfect moment between one breath and the next, she squeezed the trigger. The shot was perfect. Clean hit, center mass. She was already moving to her secondary position before the sound of the rifle shot had finished echoing across the valley. The extraction went flawlessly. Maria avoided 3 separate patrol contacts, reached her pickup point ahead of schedule, and maintained radio silence throughout the entire movement. When the evaluation team reviewed her performance, they found nothing to criticize and much to praise. "Congratulations, Staff Sergeant Santos," Gunnery Sergeant Thompson said during the graduation ceremony. "You've earned your place among the Marine Corps' elite snipers." There was no qualification in his voice now, no suggestion that her achievement was somehow different or lesser because of her gender. Maria accepted her sniper badge with quiet pride, knowing that it represented more than just successful completion of a training program. It was validation of everything she had worked for, proof that determination and skill mattered more than preconceptions. But, even as she celebrated with her fellow graduates, Maria knew that the real test was still ahead. Training was one thing, combat was something else entirely. Soon enough, she would find out if all the preparation and all the doubt had been worth it. Her first assignment came 3 weeks later, deployment to a forward operating base in Syria, where Special Operations Forces were conducting classified missions against high-value targets. The unit she was joining had requested a sniper with her specific skill set, though she suspected they had no idea they were getting a female Marine. As Maria packed her gear for deployment, she reflected on how far she had come from that young girl learning to shoot at her uncle's ranch. The journey had been difficult, often lonely, but it had led her to this moment. She was about to join some of the most elite warriors in the American military, and she had earned her place among them through skill, determination, and an absolute refusal to accept limitations others tried to impose on her. The challenges ahead would be unlike anything she had faced in training, but Maria felt ready. She had spent years proving she belonged, first to others and, ultimately, to herself. Now it was time to put that training to the ultimate test, in a place where mistakes had permanent consequences and there were no second chances. Little did she know that her deployment would place her at the center of events that would test not just her skills as a sniper, but her courage, her judgment, and her commitment to the Marines who would come to depend on her in ways none of them could imagine. The transport helicopter descended through the dusty Syrian afternoon toward forward operating base Falcon, a collection of concrete barriers, prefabricated buildings, and guard towers that had been carved out of the desert landscape. Maria pressed her face to the small window, studying the terrain that would become her new home for the next 8 months. FOB Falcon was smaller than she had expected, housing maybe 200 personnel including support staff. The base served as a staging area for special operations missions targeting ISIS leadership and weapons caches throughout the region. Its remote location, 30 miles from the nearest town, provided operational security but also made it vulnerable to attack. As the helicopter touched down, Maria grabbed her rifle case and kit bag, steeling herself for the familiar routine of proving herself to a new unit. She had learned to expect skepticism, though she hoped it might be less pronounced among special operations personnel who supposedly cared only about results. Master Chief Petty Officer Sam Rodriguez was waiting at the landing zone, his weathered face impossible to read behind dark sunglasses. The Navy SEAL had been briefed about the new sniper joining his team, but clearly hadn't expected someone who looked like Maria. "Staff Sergeant Santos?" he asked, his tone carefully neutral. "Yes, Master Chief," Maria replied, shouldering her gear. Rodriguez studied her for a moment before nodding. "Welcome to Falcon. Let's get you settled and briefed on our current operations." The base commander, Lieutenant Colonel Patricia Hayes, was a no-nonsense Army officer who had fought her own battles against military prejudice during her rise through the ranks. Her briefing was direct and thorough. "We're supporting multiple SEAL teams conducting direct action missions across this sector," Hayes explained, indicating positions on a detailed map of the region. "Your job is to provide overwatch and precision fire support when required. The teams have been operating without dedicated sniper support for 3 months since their last specialist rotated home." Maria studied the operational area, noting the complex terrain of hills, valleys, and abandoned villages that characterized this part of Syria. "What's the threat situation, ma'am?" "ISIS has been pushed out of most urban areas, but they still maintain cells in rural regions," Hayes replied. "They've adapted their tactics, smaller groups, better concealment, more sophisticated IED networks. They know we're here, and they've been probing our defenses regularly." The SEAL teams Maria would be supporting were led by Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison, a veteran of multiple deployments who ran his operations with military precision and absolute professionalism. When Rodriguez introduced Maria to Morrison and his team, she was relieved to see none of the skeptical glances she had grown accustomed to. "Santos, we've reviewed your training records," Morrison said simply. "Your marksmanship scores are impressive. How do you handle working with unfamiliar teams?" "I adapt quickly, sir," Maria replied. "My job is to make your mission successful, whatever that requires." Morrison nodded approvingly. "Good. We'll start you with some local familiarization exercises, then integrate you into active operations. Any questions?" The integration process proved smoother than Maria had anticipated. The SEAL teams were focused entirely on operational effectiveness, they cared about her ability to deliver accurate fire when needed, not about her gender or size. Within a week, she was participating in night training exercises and familiarization patrols around the base perimeter. Her first real mission came 10 days after her arrival. Intelligence had identified a high-value target meeting in an abandoned school building 15 kilometers from the base. The SEALs would infiltrate under cover of darkness, capture or eliminate the target, and extract before enemy reinforcements could respond. "Santos, you'll establish an overwatch position on Hill 247, Morrison explained during the mission briefing. Primary responsibility is early warning if enemy forces approach the target building. Secondary mission is precision fire support if the team gets in trouble." Maria studied the terrain carefully. Hill 247 offered excellent fields of fire across the valley where the target building was located, but it was exposed and would be difficult to defend if enemy forces detected her position. "Rules of engagement?" she asked. "Weapons free on any armed hostiles threatening the team," Morrison replied. "But, remember, we want this target alive if possible. Your job is to keep the escape routes clear, not to light up the neighborhood." The mission launched at 0200 hours. Maria moved to her overwatch position under cover of darkness, establishing a concealed firing position among the rocks and scrub vegetation that crowned Hill 247. Through her night vision scope, she could see the target building clearly, as well as the approaches the SEAL team would use for their assault. Everything went smoothly for the first hour. The SEALs reached their assault positions without detection. Maria maintained communication with the command post, reporting all clear on potential enemy approach routes. The operation seemed to be proceeding exactly according to plan. Then, everything changed in a matter of minutes. "Overwatch, be advised, we have vehicles approaching from the northeast," Morrison's voice crackled through Maria's radio. "Count 3 vehicles, armed occupants." Maria swung her scope toward the reported direction and immediately spotted the threat: 2 pickup trucks and a sedan racing across the desert toward the target building. In the bed of each pickup, she could see armed figures preparing weapons. "Overwatch has eyes on 3 vehicles, estimate 12 to 15 armed hostiles," she reported. "They'll reach the target building in approximately 4 minutes. Can you interdict?" Morrison asked. Maria calculated distances and angles quickly. The vehicles would pass within 600 yards of her position, well within her effective range. But, engaging them would reveal her position and potentially compromise the entire mission. "Affirmative, but it will compromise Overwatch position," she replied. "Do it," Morrison ordered. "We need more time to complete the mission." Maria adjusted her scope and selected her first target, the driver of the lead pickup truck. The vehicle was moving fast across rough terrain, making the shot challenging but not impossible. She led the target slightly, accounting for the vehicle's speed and the crosswind that was picking up as the temperature dropped. The rifle bucked against her shoulder. Through the scope, she saw the lead pickup swerve violently as the driver slumped forward. The vehicle rolled twice before coming to rest against a large boulder. The second pickup immediately changed direction, the driver recognizing the threat but unsure where it was coming from. Maria was already acquiring her next target. Her second shot shattered the windshield of the pickup, causing it to crash into a drainage ditch. The sedan had stopped completely, its occupants abandoning the vehicle and seeking cover among the rocky outcroppings that dotted the valley floor. Maria counted at least 6 armed figures moving toward defensive positions where they could potentially threaten the SEAL team's extraction route. 3 vehicles neutralized, she reported. Multiple dismounted hostiles taking cover in grid square 247 to 351. "They're between you and primary extraction point." "Copy that," Morrison replied. "We've got the target. Moving to alternate extraction point Bravo." But the alternate extraction point required the team to move through a narrow valley where they would be exposed to fire from the enemy positions Maria had identified. She could see the tactical problem developing: the SEALs would be caught in the open with limited cover if the enemy fighters repositioned. "Overwatch to ground team," she radioed. "Recommend you hold position. I can clear your route to extraction point Bravo." "Negative, Overwatch."
Too much exposure for your position.
Maria was already moving, gathering her gear and relocating to a new firing position 50 meters away. The enemy fighters were focused on the valley where they expected the SEAL team to appear. They hadn't identified her location yet, but that would change as soon as she started engaging targets. From her new position, Maria had clear shots at the enemy positions. She selected targets methodically, first the fighters with the best view of the SEAL team's planned route, then those positioned to provide mutual support.
Each shot had to count.
Once she started firing, she would have perhaps 30 seconds before return fire made her position untenable. Her first shot took out an enemy fighter who was moving to flank the SEAL team's position. The second eliminated a potential machine gun position. By the time the remaining enemies realized where the fire was coming from, Maria had eliminated 4 targets and forced the others to take cover in positions where they could no longer threaten the extraction route.
Route is clear, she reported, even as automatic weapons fire began impacting near her position.
Moving to secondary overwatch position. The next few minutes were the longest of Maria's military career. Enemy fire forced her to abandon her current position and move across exposed ground to reach cover. Bullets cracked past her head as she bounded from rock to rock, carrying her rifle and essential gear. She reached a defensive position among a cluster of boulders just as enemy fighters began advancing up the hill toward her previous location. Through her scope, she could see the SEAL team moving rapidly toward their extraction point, the captured target between 2 operators.
"Ground team, what's your status?" she called. 2 minutes to extraction, Morrison replied. "Can you hold your position?"
Maria counted at least 8 enemy fighters moving up the hillside toward her position. They were advancing tactically, using cover and mutual support, but they were also taking their time. They thought they had her trapped. "Affirmative," she replied, though she wasn't entirely sure how she was going to accomplish that. The key was to make the enemy fighters think she was still in her original position while actually engaging them from an unexpected angle. Maria used the terrain to her advantage, moving between firing positions and taking carefully aimed shots that disrupted the enemy advance without revealing her true location. When the extraction helicopter appeared on the horizon, she knew the mission was almost complete. The enemy fighters heard it too and began falling back toward their vehicles, realizing their opportunity was disappearing. "Overwatch, prepare for extraction," Morrison called.
"We're sending the bird for you next."
"Negative," Maria replied.
"Too much ground fire."
"I'll make my own way back to base." It was a calculated risk, but Maria knew the extraction helicopter would be vulnerable if it tried to pick her up while under fire. Better to let the team complete their mission and extract with the captured target while she found her own way home. The journey back to FOB Falcon took Maria 6 hours of careful movement through hostile territory.
She avoided roads and known enemy positions, using terrain features and abandoned buildings for concealment. Twice she had to hide while enemy vehicles passed nearby, searching for the sniper who had disrupted their operation. Dawn was breaking as she finally reached the base perimeter. The guards at the main gate barely recognized the dust-covered figure approaching their position until she called out the challenge and response codes. Master Chief Rodriguez was waiting for her at the command post. "Hell of a job out there, Santos," he said simply. "The team secured the target and extracted safely."
"Morrison specifically requested that you be assigned to all his future operations." Maria nodded tiredly, too exhausted for conversation. She had proven herself once again, but she knew this was just the beginning. The enemy now knew there was a skilled sniper operating from FOB Falcon. They would adapt their tactics accordingly, making future operations more dangerous for everyone involved.
Lieutenant Colonel Hayes conducted the debrief personally, reviewing every aspect of the mission in detail.
"Your tactical decisions were sound," she concluded. "The mission succeeded because you were willing to take calculated risks to support the ground team. That's exactly what we need from our sniper assets." As word of the mission spread through the base, Maria noticed a subtle change in how other personnel interacted with her. The skeptical glances disappeared, replaced by nods of professional acknowledgement. She had crossed an invisible threshold from outsider to trusted teammate. But she also understood that her actions had consequences beyond the immediate mission. The enemy would be looking for the sniper who had caused them significant casualties. FOB Falcon itself might become a target as ISIS forces sought revenge for their losses. Maria cleaned her rifle methodically that evening, checking every component for signs of wear or damage. The weapon had performed flawlessly under challenging conditions, but she knew that future missions would be even more demanding. The enemy was learning about her capabilities, just as she was learning about theirs. The war was far from over, and her role in it was just beginning to unfold in ways she couldn't yet imagine. 3 weeks after her first mission, Maria had become an integral part of FOB Falcon's operations. She had supported 6 SEAL missions, each one building her reputation as a reliable and deadly accurate sniper. The base personnel no longer saw her as an outsider, she was simply Santos, the Marine who could put a bullet exactly where it needed to go. The routine at FOB Falcon followed predictable patterns. Missions launched under cover of darkness, usually targeting ISIS leadership or weapons caches identified by intelligence sources. Maria would establish overwatch positions to protect the SEAL teams during their operations, then return to base before dawn. Between missions, she maintained her equipment, studied terrain maps, and participated in training exercises with the various special operations units. But routine bred complacency, and complacency in a combat zone could be fatal. The first indication that something had changed came during a routine patrol outside the base perimeter. Sergeant Martinez, leading a squad of Army Rangers on a security sweep, reported unusual activity in several abandoned villages that had been empty for months. "We're seeing fresh tire tracks, recently used cooking fires, and equipment caches that weren't there last week," Martinez reported during the evening intelligence briefing. "Someone's been moving through this area regularly." Lieutenant Colonel Hayes studied the patrol reports with obvious concern. "ISIS has been relatively quiet in this sector for the past month. Either they've been planning something, or they've changed their operational pattern." Master Chief Rodriguez had his own theory. "They've been watching us. Learning our patterns, our response times, our capabilities. I think they're planning something bigger than their usual hit-and-run attacks." Maria participated in these briefings now, her input valued because of her unique perspective from overwatch positions during missions. "I've noticed increased radio traffic on frequencies they typically use for coordination," she added. "Not enough to pinpoint locations, but definitely more activity than usual." The intelligence picture became clearer over the next few days. Drone surveillance identified several new enemy positions in hills overlooking the base. Electronic intercepts suggested ISIS was planning a coordinated attack, though the timing remained unclear. "They're not just planning to hit us," Morrison concluded during one briefing. "They want to overrun the entire base. Take prisoners, capture equipment, make a propaganda statement." Hayes ordered increased security measures. Additional sentries were posted, patrol schedules were randomized, and defensive positions were reinforced with extra ammunition and supplies. The base went to a higher state of readiness, with all personnel required to keep weapons and body armor within immediate reach. Maria received special instructions to prepare multiple sniper positions around the base perimeter. "If they come at us, we'll need precision fire from multiple angles," Rodriguez explained. "You'll need to be able to move between positions quickly without being detected." She spent the next 2 days identifying and preparing 6 different sniper hides around FOB Falcon's perimeter. Each position offered different fields of fire and covered potential enemy approach routes. She cached ammunition and emergency supplies at each location, planning movement routes that would allow her to relocate quickly during a firefight. The attack came on a Tuesday morning just before dawn. Maria was checking one of her forward positions when the first mortar round exploded inside the base perimeter. She immediately dropped into her prepared fighting position, scanning the surrounding terrain through her rifle scope for muzzle flashes or movement. "All stations, this is Falcon Base," Lieutenant Colonel Hayes' voice came through every radio frequency. "We are under attack. Implement Defensive Plan Alpha. This is not a drill." The initial barrage consisted of mortars and rocket-propelled grenades fired from positions in the hills surrounding the base. Maria could see muzzle flashes from at least 3 different locations, suggesting a coordinated assault involving perhaps 50 enemy fighters. "Overwatch to Falcon Base," she radioed.
I have eyes on enemy positions in sectors 2, 4, and 7. Estimate 30 to 40 hostiles with crew-served weapons. Copy, Overwatch. Engage targets of opportunity.
Maria selected her first target, a mortar team positioned on a rocky outcrop 800 meters from the base. The crew was working efficiently, dropping rounds down the tube in a steady rhythm.
Her first shot eliminated the gunner. Her second shot scattered the ammunition crew.
But, eliminating one mortar position only drew attention to her location. Almost immediately, small arms fire began impacting around her position as enemy fighters identified her muzzle flash. She was already moving to her second prepared position when the radio crackled with urgent traffic.
Falcon base to all stations. We have enemy infantry advancing on the south perimeter. Multiple squads with heavy weapons. From Renew position, Maria could see the main enemy assault developing.
3 groups of fighters were advancing on the base from different directions, using natural cover to mask their approach. They were moving tactically, with supporting fire from the mortar positions she had already engaged. The base's defensive plan called for concentrated fire to break up enemy assault formations before they could reach the perimeter. But, the defenders were outnumbered, and some of the guard towers had already taken damage from the initial mortar barrage.
Overwatch, we need you to break up that assault formation in Sector 4, Rodriguez called. They're getting too close to the south gate.
Maria studied the advancing enemy fighters through her scope. They were using a dry creek bed for concealment, advancing in bounds with good fire discipline. Taking them out would require multiple shots from an exposed position, making her vulnerable to return fire. But, the alternative was letting them reach the base perimeter where they could inflict serious casualties on the defenders.
Copy. Engaging Sector 4.
Her first shot dropped the lead fighter, causing the formation to halt and seek better cover. Her second and third shots eliminated 2 more targets, disrupting the enemy's advance timing. But, return fire was immediate and accurate, forcing her to abandon her position and move to her third prepared location. The battle continued for 2 hours, with Maria moving between positions and engaging targets throughout the surrounding hills. She eliminated mortar crews, machine gun teams, and squad leaders, systematically disrupting the enemy's coordinated assault.
But, the enemy adapted quickly.
They began using smoke grenades to obscure their movements and concentrated fire on any position where Maria's muzzle flash was detected. Several times she barely escaped positions before they were overrun by enemy fighters who had worked their way close to her locations. The turning point came when Apache attack helicopters arrived from a larger base 50 miles away. Their 30mm cannon fire devastated the remaining enemy positions, forcing ISIS fighters to break contact and withdraw to previously prepared escape routes.
Falcon base to Overwatch, Hayes called as the sound of helicopter rotors filled the air. Return to base for accountability and debrief. Maria emerged from her final fighting position exhausted but uninjured.
The base had survived the assault with minimal casualties, 3 wounded, none killed. Enemy casualties were estimated at over 30, many of them caused by her precision fire from multiple positions. The after-action review revealed how close the base had come to being overrun. Without precision fire disrupting their assault formations, they would have reached our perimeter with enough strength to breach our defenses, Hayes concluded.
Santos, your actions were instrumental in saving this base. But, Maria understood that the attack represented a new level of threat.
ISIS had demonstrated the ability to plan and execute complex operations involving significant numbers of fighters and coordinated fire support. The days of simple hit-and-run attacks were over. More importantly, the enemy had learned about her capabilities and tactics. They had actively hunted her during the battle, using multiple teams to triangulate her position based on her shots. Future operations would be far more dangerous as the enemy adapted their tactics to counter her effectiveness. They'll be back, Rodriguez said during the debrief. This was a probing attack to test our defenses and capabilities. Next time they'll come with better intelligence and more resources.
Hayes nodded grimly. We're requesting additional defensive assets and a larger garrison.
But, it will take time to coordinate those resources.
Until then, we maintain current security levels and assume another attack is imminent.
Maria spent the following days improving her defensive positions and developing new tactics for operating under increased enemy pressure. She studied the battle damage to understand how the enemy had tracked her movements and identified ways to better conceal her positions. She also began training other base personnel in basic marksmanship and spotting techniques. If another attack came, she would need additional eyes and guns to cover all the potential enemy approach routes. The expected follow-up attack never materialized, but intelligence reports suggested ISIS was planning something larger. Intercepted communications mentioned foreign fighters arriving in the region and references to martyrdom operations that suggested suicide attacks. "They're not going to try another conventional assault," Morrison concluded during one briefing.
"They learned that we can defend against that. Next time they'll try something different."
Maria agreed with that assessment, but she wasn't sure what form the next attack would take. The enemy had demonstrated tactical flexibility and learning ability that made them far more dangerous than typical insurgent forces. 3 days later, she got her answer. The attack began with a single vehicle approaching the main gate at high speed.
Guard towers immediately opened fire, assuming it was a vehicle-borne improvised explosive device.
The truck exploded just outside the gate, causing significant damage but no casualties among the defenders. But the truck bomb was just a diversion. While defenders focused on the main gate, small teams of enemy fighters infiltrated the base perimeter at 3 different locations, using the confusion and dust from the explosion to mask their approach.
"We have enemy inside the perimeter," came the urgent radio call. "Multiple infiltrators with automatic weapons.
They're heading for the command post and ammunition storage areas." Maria was in her quarters when the attack began, but she was armed and moving within seconds of the first explosion. She grabbed her rifle and headed toward the sound of gunfire, knowing that enemy fighters inside the base perimeter represented an immediate threat to everyone on the installation. The next few hours would test every skill she had learned and every ounce of courage she possessed. The enemy wasn't just attacking FOB Falcon, they were trying to destroy it from within, and Maria was one of the few people positioned to stop them. As she moved through the base in search of enemy infiltrators, Maria realized this attack was different from anything they had faced before.
The enemy was no longer content to probe their defenses from a distance.
They had brought the fight directly to the heart of FOB Falcon, and the outcome would determine whether the base survived or fell to a handful of determined fighters willing to die for their cause. The real test of her abilities was about to begin. The explosion at the main gate had created a massive cloud of dust and debris that hung over FOB Falcon like fog, reducing visibility to mere yards in some areas. Maria moved through this chaos with her rifle ready, using buildings and equipment for cover as she searched for the infiltrators who had breached the perimeter during the confusion. The first enemy fighter she encountered was attempting to plant explosives at the base fuel depot. Maria spotted him through the settling dust, recognizing the distinctive pattern of his equipment and movement that marked him as someone who didn't belong. He was focused entirely on his demolition work, unaware that he had been detected. Her shot dropped him instantly, but the sound of her rifle immediately drew attention from his teammates.
Automatic weapons fire erupted from 2 different directions as the remaining infiltrators realized they were being hunted.
"Overwatch to all stations," Maria radioed while moving to a new position. "I have 1 enemy Kia at the fuel depot.
Multiple hostiles still active inside the perimeter."
"Copy, Overwatch," came Rodriguez's voice. "SEAL team is moving to secure the command post. Army Rangers are sweeping the motor pool area. Watch your targets, we have friendlies moving throughout the base."
The warning was crucial.
In the dust and confusion, identifying targets was extremely difficult. Maria had to be absolutely certain of her targets before engaging, since friendly forces were also moving through the same areas where enemy infiltrators were operating. She worked her way toward the command post, where the heaviest gunfire seemed to be concentrated.
Through the swirling dust, she could see muzzle flashes from what appeared to be a fierce firefight near the communications building.
As she approached, Maria could make out the tactical situation more clearly.
3 enemy fighters had taken positions inside the communications building and were engaging a SEAL team that was trying to approach from the front.
The enemy had good cover and elevated positions that gave them significant advantages. But they had made a tactical error. They were so focused on the threat in front of them that they hadn't secured their flanks or rear approaches. Maria identified a position where she could engage them from an unexpected angle. Moving carefully through the debris field created by the truck bomb, she reached a damaged building that provided both concealment and clear shots at the enemy positions. Through her scope, she could see two fighters manning automatic weapons at different windows, while a third appeared to be working with some kind of electronic equipment. Her first shot eliminated the fighter with the electronic gear, who she suspected was trying to disrupt the base's communication systems. Her second shot took out one of the machine gunners. The third fighter immediately shifted position, trying to locate the source of the incoming fire. "SEAL team, you're clear to advance," Maria radioed.
2 enemy down, 1 remaining in the northwest corner of the building.
The SEALs moved immediately, their assault coordinated and professional. Within minutes, they had cleared the building and secured the communications equipment that the enemy had been trying to destroy. But the operation was far from over. Radio reports indicated enemy contact at multiple locations throughout the base. The infiltrators had spread out to attack different critical targets simultaneously, forcing the defenders to split their forces to respond to multiple threats. "Overwatch, we need you at the ammunition storage area," Hayes called over the radio. "Enemy team has taken positions there and we can't approach without significant casualties."
Maria acknowledged the order and began moving across the base toward the ammunition bunkers.
The area was particularly dangerous because any stray bullets could potentially cause secondary explosions that would devastate the entire installation. As she approached the storage area, she could see the tactical problem immediately. 2 enemy fighters had positioned themselves behind concrete barriers near the main ammunition bunker, using the cover to engage any defenders who tried to approach. Their position was nearly impregnable from ground level, and any assault would likely result in damage to the ammunition stores. But Maria noticed something the enemy fighters had missed. A damaged water tower near their position provided an elevated shooting platform that would give her a clear angle on their defensive positions. The tower had taken shrapnel damage from the initial explosion and was listing slightly, but it appeared stable enough to support her weight. Climbing the damaged tower was risky, but it was the only way to get the angle she needed for clean shots that wouldn't endanger the ammunition storage. Maria moved carefully, testing each handhold and foothold as she ascended the tilted structure. From her elevated position, she could see both enemy fighters clearly. They were well disciplined, maintaining their positions and conserving ammunition while watching for approaching defenders. But they had positioned themselves to defend against ground assault, not against fire from above.
Maria's first shot was carefully aimed to ensure the bullet would not continue toward the ammunition bunkers if it passed through the target.
The round struck the first fighter center mass, dropping him instantly. The second fighter began looking for cover, but there was nowhere to go that would protect him from Maria's elevated position. Her second shot ended the threat to the ammunition storage area.
"Ammo storage secure," she reported. 2 enemy Kia, no damage to ordnance. By this time, the defenders had regained the initiative.
The initial confusion caused by the truck bomb had subsided, and organized teams were systematically clearing the base of remaining threats.
But radio reports suggested at least 1 more enemy team was still active somewhere within the perimeter.
"All stations, we have reports of enemy movement near the helicopter landing zone," Rodriguez called.
"Possible attempt to damage or destroy aircraft."
The helicopters represented FOB Falcon's primary means of evacuation and resupply.
If the enemy succeeded in destroying them, the base would be effectively isolated until replacement aircraft could be brought in from other locations.
Maria headed toward the landing zone, moving carefully through areas that might still contain enemy fighters. The helicopter pad was located in an open area surrounded by fuel storage tanks and maintenance buildings, providing multiple positions where enemy fighters could establish ambush sites. As she approached the landing zone perimeter, Maria heard the distinctive sound of an explosion, followed by the whoosh of igniting fuel. One of the helicopters was already burning, sending thick black smoke across the area and reducing visibility even further. Through the smoke, she could see movement near the second helicopter.
At least two figures were working around the aircraft, and their movements suggested they were placing explosive charges rather than conducting normal maintenance. But engaging targets near the helicopter was extremely risky. The aircraft was loaded with fuel and ammunition, and any stray bullets could cause a catastrophic explosion that would destroy the remaining aircraft and potentially cause casualties among nearby defenders. Maria needed to get closer for precision shots that would neutralize the threat without damaging the helicopter. She used the smoke from the burning aircraft as concealment, moving within 200 meters of the targets before establishing a firing position. Through her scope, she could clearly identify two enemy fighters placing explosive devices on the helicopter's main rotor assembly and fuel system. They were working methodically, suggesting they had received specific training on how to disable military aircraft. The shots had to be perfect, close enough to the targets to ensure immediate incapacitation, but angled to avoid hitting critical aircraft components. Maria calculated the trajectories carefully, accounting for the light wind that was shifting the smoke across the landing zone. Her first shot dropped one fighter immediately. The second fighter looked up in alarm, trying to identify the source of the threat while continuing to work on the explosive device. Maria's second shot eliminated him before he could complete his sabotage mission. "Landing zone secure," she reported. Two enemy Kia, one aircraft destroyed, one aircraft undamaged. The radio traffic indicated that organized resistance was ending throughout the base. Individual enemy fighters might still be hiding in various locations, but the coordinated attack had been defeated. The defenders began the process of conducting detailed sweeps to ensure no threats remained. Maria joined one of the search teams, using her marksmanship skills to provide precision fire support as they cleared buildings and storage areas where enemy fighters might be concealed. The sweep took several hours, but no additional threats were discovered. The final casualty count reflected both the intensity of the attack and the effectiveness of the defense. 8 enemy fighters had been killed, with no survivors among the infiltration teams. Defender casualties were remarkably light, 5 wounded, none killed. The base had sustained significant damage to some buildings and equipment, but all critical systems remained operational. During the after-action review, Lieutenant Colonel Hayes specifically credited Maria's actions with preventing the attack from achieving its objectives. "Without precision fire eliminating specific threats, we would have lost our communications capability, ammunition storage, and helicopter assets," she concluded. Santos single-handedly prevented this base from being effectively neutralized. Master Chief Rodriguez agreed with that assessment. The enemy plan was sophisticated and well executed. They understood our defensive capabilities and designed their attack to exploit our weaknesses. But they didn't account for having a sniper who could engage multiple targets throughout the base with surgical precision. The intelligence analysis revealed just how close FOB Falcon had come to disaster. The enemy had infiltrated with enough explosives to destroy the fuel depot, ammunition storage, communications center, and helicopter landing zone. Success in any one of those missions would have crippled the base's operational capability for weeks or months. This was their main effort, Morrison concluded. They committed significant resources and personnel to this attack. The fact that it failed completely will force them to reconsider their entire approach to targeting our installations. But Maria understood that her role in defeating the attack had also made her a specific target for future enemy operations. ISIS now knew that FOB Falcon had a highly skilled sniper who could disrupt their most carefully planned operations. They would adapt their tactics accordingly. Sure enough, intelligence reports over the following days indicated increased enemy interest in identifying and eliminating the sniper who had caused them such significant losses. Radio intercepts mentioned bounties being offered for information about the American shooter and plans to target sniper positions during future operations. "You've made quite an impression," Rodriguez told her during one security briefing. "The enemy knows you're here, and they're going to come for you specifically next time." Maria accepted this development with the same calm professionalism she brought to everything else. "They're welcome to try, Master Chief. But they'll find out that hunting a sniper is a lot more dangerous than they expect." Her deployment to FOB Falcon was scheduled to end in 2 months, but the base commander requested an extension of her assignment. "We've built our defensive plans around your capabilities," Hayes explained.
Your replacement will need time to learn the terrain and establish the same level of effectiveness. Maria agreed to the extension, understanding that her skills were critically needed at this remote outpost. But she also knew that each additional month in theater increased the likelihood that the enemy would develop effective countermeasures against her operations. The war against ISIS was far from over, and FOB Falcon remained a crucial staging area for special operations missions throughout the region. As long as the base continued to threaten enemy operations, it would remain a target for increasingly sophisticated attacks. Maria had proven that determination, skill, and courage mattered more than physical size or gender in combat situations. Her actions had saved lives and preserved critical military capabilities in one of the most dangerous regions of the world. The young woman who had struggled to earn acceptance in sniper school had become one of the most respected and feared marksmen in the theater of operations. But she also understood that her greatest challenges still lay ahead. The enemy was learning, adapting, and planning. The next attack would be different, more sophisticated, specifically designed to counter her abilities. When that attack came, she would need every skill she had learned and every ounce of courage she possessed. Maria Santos had earned her place among the elite warriors of the American military through performance under the most demanding conditions imaginable. Her story had become legend among the special operations community, proof that excellence came from dedication and skill rather than preconceptions about who belonged on the battlefield. The young girl who had learned to shoot at her uncle's ranch had become a guardian of American lives in one of the most dangerous places on earth. Her journey was far from complete, but she had already proven that she was exactly where she belonged, doing exactly what she was meant to do.